Inner City Missions presents The Word for the World Wide Web, featuring the Bible teaching ministry of Evangelist Stephan Benson. For more information about the evangelist, the ministry, or to make a tax-deductible donation to support this vital gospel outreach, visit our website, innercitymissions.org. That's INNER for inner, City Missions with an S.org. Here now is Evangelist Stephan Benson with the Word for the World Wide Web.
Today's theme as we open the scripture is Bible in the News. It's not the title of a message. It is a theme, Bible in the News. And I think I will have occasion to return to this theme as events unfold in the world, as headlines are written, and as we see the Word of God coming to pass before our very eyes. And I believe tonight is one such night that we're going to see the Word of God coming to pass before our very eyes. We're going to camp in Psalm 83, but before we do, we need to understand something about Asaph, who wrote Psalm 83. Asaph was a song leader. He was a song leader under King David at the temple. He and his sons, they led in worship. They led the praises of God in Israel. But it says that he is also a seer or a prophet. That means that he prophesied. First Chronicles 25 verse 2 says he prophesied according to the commandment of the king. And in 2 Chronicles 29, it says that he was a seer outright. And so we see that verse 30, moreover, King Hezekiah and the leaders commanded the Levites to go sing praises to Yahweh with the words of David and of Asaph, the seer. So they sang praises with gladness and they bowed their heads and worshiped. Asaph wrote 12 Psalms, Psalm 73 through Psalm 83. Also he wrote Psalm 50. But in Psalm 83, it's more than a prayer. It is a prophecy. And I hope that it will become clear to you that Asaph, the seer, is prophesying in this psalm. Psalm 83. Do not keep silent, O God. Do not hold your peace. And do not be still, O God. Asaph is pleading with God to say something and to do something. He wants God to say something and to do something, to become active, to activate himself, to stand up and to do something. Why? Verse 2, for behold, your enemies make a tumult. Those who hate you have lifted up their head. They have taken crafty counsel against your people and consulted it together against your sheltered ones. They have made a tumult. They have been engaged in a lot of chattering and a lot of discussion. The enemies of God, the enemies of Israel, God's people, they have consulted together. They have consulted with crafty counsel. They have conspired, as it were. They have plotted in the dark places, in hidden places, in secret meetings. They have plotted to do something against God's people, Israel. You have taken crafty counsel against your people and have consulted together against your sheltered ones. They have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be remembered no more. For they have formed a confederacy against you. They, whoever they are, we have not understood that yet. He has not talked about who these people are, but he's about to. But they have consulted together. They have conspired together, they have plotted together against God's people Israel, and also in that way against God himself. Asaph wants God to rise up and do something and not be still, not be quiet, not be inactive. This is his prayer. This is his passionate plea. Who are these people that have taken crafty counsel against God's people? Who are these people that have conspired to do evil against God's people? Verse 5. That the name of Israel might not be remembered anymore, to wipe them off the face of the earth. There's a saying now in Israel, among the nations surrounding Israel, let us drive them from the river to the sea, that is, from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, to wipe them out as a nation. This is the reason why they are conspiring, to wipe Israel out as a nation. This is not the normal reasons why people confederate. This is not the normal reasons why nations get together in a confederacy. It's not about money. It's not about silver. It's not about gold. It's not about raw materials. It's not about a strategic military location. It's not about a sea coast military strategic point. It's about wiping Israel out as a nation, causing that the nation of Israel, the name would no longer be remembered. This was happening 3,000 years ago. Asaph wrote this psalm around 1000 BC, 3,000 years ago. There was a conspiracy, there was tumult, there was chatter, there was a confederacy planned, an attack planned to wipe Israel out. This is not normal. This is abnormal. And so, who are these people that have confederated to take a crafty counsel against the people of God and therefore against God himself? He goes on to tell us, verse 6, the tents of Edom, the first people group mentioned, the tents of Edom. Now, this is not a sovereign nation. When you see the word tents of Edom, it means they're in a habitational refugee status maybe, or in a military encampment maybe. They're not a sovereign nation. The tents of Edom is modern day Palestinians who can trace their lineage back to Edom, who was Esau, the twin brother of Jacob. And they've had an animosity since Jacob and Esau were together in conflict over the birthright and over his the covenantal blessing that Isaac passed on to Jacob instead of Esau. This is the everlasting hatred. And God says he will deal with Edom in the last days. He's going to deal with Edom, who when Israel was sacked by the Babylonians and the temple was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar, they were out there saying to the Babylonians, raise it, raise it, raise it. And when they took the children of Israel and dashed their heads against the stones and killed them, they were saying, kill them, kill them, kill them. And when they were trying to flee for their lives, they would cut off Israel from fleeing from the Babylonians, and they would hinder them. And they said, raise it, raise it, raise it. God never forgot that. So the tents of Edom are the Palestinians. Most of them go back to Esau. But they're not a sovereign nation. They want a nation. They want to become a nation. That's why they want to take over Israel's land. They might have another Arab nation there and eliminate Israel and give it to the Palestinians. Or they want a two-state solution. But the president of the United States now is for that, but not Trump or not, well, only Trump was not for the two-state solution. But this present president of the United States is for a two-state solution, Israel and the Palestinians with their sovereign state. So the tents of Edom are the Palestinians. And the Ishmaelites, this is the Arabs, the true Arabs, Saudi Arabia. Ishmael was the firstborn son to Abram through Hagar, the Egyptian, and he sent them east. He sent them out, and they traveled and migrated east and settled in the peninsula of Saudi Arabia. They traced their lineage back to Ishmael. The Arabians, they're the true Arabs, the Ishmaelites, descendants of Ishmael. Saudi Arabia, in today's language. Moab is Jordan, central Jordan. Remember, Ammon and Moab settled in the land east of the Jordan River. These were the children of Lot through his daughters that he begat. And Ammon and Moab were those children that became nations. And they have settled in the land today called Jordan. Central Jordan is Moab's area that they used to occupy in ancient days. And northern Jordan is the land that Ammon occupied. Amman was the capital back then, the capital of Ammon, and it's also the capital of Jordan today. The tents of Edom and the Ishmaelites, Moab and the Hagarites. This is Hagar, and she's from Egypt, and she was an Egyptian to begin with, and so this speaks of the Egyptians getting involved, although they have a peace treaty right now with Israel, and yet when this thing happens, they will nullify that peace agreement and get into the 22-nation Arab League and be part of this confederacy. Gebal is Lebanon, where Hezbollah is located, a terrorist organization who is responsible for the attacks on the Golan Heights in northern Israel, and they're capable of sending 1,000 rockets a day, lobbing them over the Golan Heights into Israel. They have weapons being supplied to them by Iran. They are a proxy nation or people group that's supported by Iran, and they are on the northern border of Israel in Lebanon, present-day Lebanon. But these are Hezbollah. Ammon, that's Jordan, that's northern Jordan. And Amalek, that's Sinai, the Sinai Peninsula right near Egypt, right southern, the most southern point of Israel, the Sinai Peninsula where the Amalekites were. Philistia, that's Hamas. The Philistines, who came from Cyprus, out of Cyprus, and were David's primary foes during his administration. They were, always have been Israel's enemies. David conquered them during his time. But they are still there in Hamas. Hamas was Hamas, and Gaza was Gaza. Gaza was Gaza way back in David's day, along with Escalon and Ashdod. These are Philistine cities. Today it's Hamas. Hamas within Israel itself, but southern Israel. They are capable of sending 1,000 rockets a day supplied to them by Iran into Israel. And the inhabitants of Tyre, another nation without a sovereign state. This is Hezbollah in present-day Lebanon. Hezbollah is also a terrorist group that's being fueled and financed by Iran and supplied with arms by Iran. They have many, many weapons. Assyria also has joined with them. They have helped the children of Lot, that is Jordan, Ammon, and Moab. Now, Assyria is present-day Syria. Syria, where Bashar al-Assad is the president. And he has been accused of using chemical weapons against his own people in the civil uprising of 2011, when he was nearly overthrown, when so many Arab states were overthrown, like Tunisia and Libya, when Gaddafi was killed, and other Arab nations on that North African latitude that borders the Mediterranean Sea, several, including Egypt. They had an overthrow of that government, Tunisia, Algeria, Libya. 2011, they replaced many of those presidents and prime ministers with different ones during that uprising. They tried to get rid of Assad at the time, but Russia was supplying him, backing him, and they could not get rid of Assad. And he used chemical weapons, they say 300 times on his own people. And there's a chemical weapons cache in Syria. That's where Saddam Hussein hid his chemical weapons, in Syria. I mean, they have more than napalm. They have the latest stuff. And they have rockets to deliver them into Israel. These have helped the children of Lot. Selah. Now those are the 9 nations confederated together that have conspired against God's people, therefore against God himself. They have taken crafty counsel. They want to eliminate Israel as a nation, that the name of Israel may not be remembered anymore. They take them out of the textbooks. They take them out of the language of the Middle East. In most Muslim nations, Israel is not even on the maps. In most Islamic nations, Israel, the nation Israel, is not on their maps. And in the Quran itself, the extermination of the nation Israel is one of the most important tenets of the faith in Islam. When it says Allah Akbar, that means God is greater, not God is great, but God is greater than the God of the Hebrews. So these nations in their modern names are Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, possibly Saudi Arabia, Iraq, parts of this Shiite Muslim groups in Iraq that also want to participate in this confederacy. These are Israel's immediate neighbors. They're surrounded by it. And it's very important you understand, they border Israel. Some are within Israel, like Hamas is within the nation of Israel, with their own little section, the Gaza Strip. Hezbollah is on the northern border of Israel, in Lebanon. But Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, Saudi Arabia, who recently began talking again with Iran. They were about to join in the agreement to recognize Israel and to have diplomatic relations with Israel again. But because of this latest uprising, they have withdrawn that, and now they are speaking again to Iran. Now you have to understand, within Islam, there are 2 major factions or denominations, as it were. One is Shiite and one is Sunni. And besides Israel, they hate one another more than any other thing other than Israel. But they fought many wars together. The 8-year war between Iraq and Iran, Shiites against Sunnis. And Saudi Arabia is a Sunni nation, but Iran is a Shiite nation. Syria, Shiite. But they will confederate together to attack Israel. Now, those are the nations involved in this confederacy. The ancient names are listed there, but their modern names are known to us today. Now, what unites them, what Ahab could not have seen, he could not have known this. Why would these nations be so united? Not to get plundered, not to get gold, not to get spoiled, not to get silver, not to get riches, but they're united with a common hatred to eliminate Israel as a nation and to drive them into the sea. Back then, Ahab had no idea what that would be. But now we know what it is. What joins them together? What's the common denominator? Islam, Jihad, the holy war. Islam confederates them and binds them together to the death. In Hamas, they train little children to hate Jews and to kill them and to want to be suicide bombers. They use children as shields, and they build their military installations in hospitals and schools and commercial districts. They have a series of network of underground tunnels that go for miles and miles that Israel is blowing up and flooding with salt water from the sea and destroying. Benjamin Netanyahu became president again for Israel in 2022. He recently stated that he will not cease this war against Hamas until Hamas is eliminated. Eliminated. He says this is the beginning of the end of Hamas. He's not going to tolerate the existence of Hamas any longer, because they are a terrorist group and they do despicable things to Israel, to the hostages, and they're not being reported by the Western press because the Western press is against Israel. That includes the United Nations and all the Western press. This is happening before our very eyes. This war started October 7th. Hamas, or the tents of Edom, if you please, against Israel. Will it expand? Hey, that's the question. Will it widen? That's the question. Because if it widens, it's going to become the fulfillment of Psalm 83. If it does not widen, it is a setting of the stage for Psalm 83 war. Read on. Now Asaph is going to plead with God again. He wants God to get involved. Be not silent, be not still, get active, get busy, God. He says in verse 9, deal with them as with Midian, as with Sisera, as with Jabin at the brook Kishon. Now he's taken God's attention back to two battles in Israel's history. Deborah was a prophetess, and she judged Israel after Ehud died, who was the last judge. And Deborah was a prophetess. She got a word from God that God wanted to, after the children of Israel cried out to Yahweh because the Canaanite, Jabin, the Canaanite king, had oppressed Israel for 20 years. 20 years. Because Israel did wrong, they sinned, and God would use their enemies to put them in bondage as a way of chastising them, to drive them back to keeping the covenant that he made with them. And after a while, after 20 years of oppression, Israel cried out to God. And God decided it was time to deliver Israel from the Canaanites and King Jabin. And so he wanted to get King Jabin up to Mount Tabor, where he would give them into the hands of Israel. And Deborah got that word as a prophetess from the Lord. And she also was the judge of Israel at the time. And she called for her commander-in-chief, Barak, of the military over certain tribes of Israel. She called him and said, listen, God wants to meet King Jabin in battle in Mount Tabor. And now Jabin, king of the Canaanites, had 900 iron chariots. 900 iron chariots. Israel had no chariots. And Barak was concerned. He didn't like the odds. He didn't want to really go. He said, now I'll go if you come with me. But if you do not come with me, I'm not going. Now that was unmanly to say the least. But Deborah said, I will go with you. I will go up with you. And so God lured the king of the Canaanites, Jabin, to Mount Tabor, and God gave them victory. Now that's found in Judges 4 and 5. And now they never again, hear this, they never again oppressed Israel. Jabin and the Canaanites never again oppressed Israel. And then God is directed by the prayer of Asaph to another battle with Midian, in which Gideon, with 300 men armed with trumpets, that is ram's horns and torches in a hidden torches in a pitcher of sorts. They blew their ram's horns and broke the pitchers with the torches and said, "The sword of the Lord," and Gideon. And God sent a panic among the 120,000 Midianites, sent a panic to them. And they just began killing each other and just panicking everywhere. And God gave Gideon and his 300, plus with the help of the Ephraimites, who were not in the immediate battle, but came afterwards and fought with the Midianites. They killed the generals Zeb and Oreb, and then they brought their heads to Gideon, and then they captured the two kings of the Midianites, Zalmud and Zeb. I want to say this one thing about Midianites that happened. They brought the two kings of the Midianites to Gideon, and Gideon told his eldest son to kill them. And he wouldn't because he was a youth. And so the two kings said, "Well, kill us yourself," because they had taken him captive. "Kill us yourself," since, the man is only as strong as he is going to be. And so Gideon rose up and killed them. And so the point of the matter is, Asaph is directing God's attention to two battles in Israel's history. The one between King Jabin and the Canaanites, where Deborah and Barak defeated them, and they removed them from ever oppressing Israel again. And he's also taking God to the time that 120,000 Midianites, under the two kings, Zeb and Zalmunna, along with their military generals, attacked Israel, and Gideon and the Ephraimites destroyed them. And they never again oppressed Israel. That's the point of his message. He says, deal with them, verse 9 of Psalm 83, deal with them as with Midian, as with Sisera, as with Jabin at the brook Kishon, who perished at Endor, who became a refuge on the earth. Make their nobles like Oreb and like Zeb. Those are the two military generals of the Midianites. Yet, yes, all their princes like Zebah and Zalmunna. Those are the two kings of the Midianites, whom Gideon killed, who said, "Let us take for ourselves the pastures of God for a possession." That is, the land of Israel for a possession. The Midianites were going to do that. And God says, make them deal with this confederacy of these 9 nations like you dealt with the Midianites under Gideon, and like you dealt with the Canaanites under Deborah and Barak. Deal with them like that so they never oppress us again. And then he says in verse 13, "Oh my God, make them like the whirling dust, like the chaff before the wind, as the fire burns the woods, and as the flame gets the mountains on fire. So pursue them with your tempest, and frighten them with your storm. Fill their faces with shame, that they may seek your name, O Yahweh. Let them be confounded and dismayed forever. Yes, let them be put to shame and perish, that they may know that you, whose name alone is Jehovah or Yahweh, are the most high over all the earth." So Asaph wants God to deal with this confederacy of Israel's neighbors, who wants to wipe them off the map, that their name is not remembered anymore. He wants God to deal with them to the end. He wants the end of the oppression. Now, today, what that means today is the Israeli-Arab conflict has been going on since 1948 in the War of Independence, when Syria, Jordan, and Egypt attacked Israel along with several other nations, Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, before they became nation states, right after they became nation states in 1948. But Israel won that war. I don't know how they did it, but they won that war. They had hardly any weapons or anything else, but God was with them, and they won that war in 1948. Then they were oppressed again in 1967 when they were attacked in the so-called Six-Day War, in which Israel captured the city of Jerusalem. and had the Holy Mountain itself under the control. But then the general, Moshe Dayan, gave it to Jordan, gave the Holy Mountain to Jordan. I think God was in that to delay things for a long time. So they oppressed them again in 1967, 1948, 1967, then 1973 in the Yom Kippur War, when Israel was attacked on the day of Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year in Israel. And the war began there, and God intervened and had the whole Egyptian army surrounded, and Israel could have wiped out the Egyptian army. Soviet Union said, no, we're going to move in if that happens. And President Nixon put the whole military on DECON alert. That is DEFCON, Defense Condition 1. 3 means World War III. But 1 was, he put the whole military on DEFCON 1 alert. And Israel backed off. But even after those wars, Israeli-Arab conflict continued. Those wars, some people say this Psalm 83 was fulfilled in the 1948 war. Well, no, it wasn't. Or they say it was fulfilled in 1967. No, it wasn't. In 1970, no, it wasn't, because the oppression has continued. When we read the rest of Psalm 83, where he's petitioning God to wipe them out, deal with them like you did with the Canaanites, like you did with the Midianites, wipe them out in this Arab-Israeli conflict altogether. Let there be no more Israeli-Arab conflict. That's what Asaph is crying for 3,000 years ago. And that's what I believe is happening now. We must understand something. If this war widens, and they are preparing, Israel had a major drill called the Chariots of Fire, in which they practiced, rehearsed bombing Iran, along with Israel, along with the United States, bombing Iran. As a matter of fact, Israel took out $4 billion for a military budget in 2022 to attack Iran. $4 billion defense budget to attack Iran. And in that Chariots of Fire war rehearsal, they also built an underground hospital in northern Israel, close to the border of Lebanon, underground hospital, because they believed that they would suffer many casualties within their own land if a war breaks out like that. So they're being prepared. They are being prepared for a widening of this war. And they have been prepared for this and being prepared for this the last 2-3 years. Now, what will trigger this confederacy involving the rest of these nations, not just Hamas? What will trigger it? And I believe that we have the answer to that in the scripture. Jeremiah chapter 49, verse 34. The word of Yahweh that came to Jeremiah the prophet against Elam in the beginning of the reign of Zedekiah, king of Judah, saying, thus says Yahweh of hosts, behold, I will break the bow of Elam. The bow of Elam, that's his arsenal, that's his military might. The bow of Elam, his launching power, his bow. I will break the bow of Elam, the foremost of their might. Against Elam, I will bring the four winds from the four quarters of heaven and scatter them toward all those winds. There shall be no nations where the outcast of Elam will not go. In other words, this has not happened yet, people. It didn't happen in ancient Persia. It didn't happen in Elam, or when it became Persia. It certainly hasn't happened now, where something happened when God struck Persia, Elam, today Iran, which causes many people to flee out of the country. to flee for their lives out of the area. Because God says, I will call for the four winds and I will scatter them that there shall be no nations where the outcasts of Elam will not go. In other words, there will be refugees seeking habitation, and there will be not a single nation on the earth that will not take in some of these Iranians. That has not happened yet. For I will cause Elam to be dismayed before their enemies and before those who seek their life. I will bring disaster upon them. My fierce anger, says Yahweh, and I will send the sword after them until I have consumed them. This has not happened, but here's the great thing that I want you to know something about Iran. Right now, today in Iran, there's a great revival taking place. God is supernaturally saving Iranians. He is appearing in dreams and visions to many Iranians. He is healing blind eyes, healing hearts, healing deaf ears, mute mouths. He is healing the lame. God is miraculously doing great things in Islam and in Iran today, and they are turning to the Lord by 19% each year. Therefore, God says this in verse 38, and this is what the believers in Iran are waiting for. They're saying, God says, I will set my throne in Elam. I will set my throne in Elam. That certainly hasn't happened. And will destroy from there the king and the prince, says Yahweh. But it shall come to pass in the latter days, I will bring back the captives of Elam, says Yahweh. Latter days. He places us, this generation, right in the center of this battle. Our day, our generation. Watch. If this happens, know that God is in control. Do not fear. Do not be afraid. God has told us beforehand that we will have peace. He's in control. He's going to bring back those outcasts. He's going to bring them back to Iran. And I believe it's going to be the first Islamic nation to turn as a nation and become Christian in the latter days, our day. And many of the believers in Iran believe the same thing, and they're waiting for this to happen. Now, if God strikes that area where the facilities, nuclear underground facilities are in Bashir, and where the launching silos are near Bashir, there could be a release of nuclear fallout. There could be a contamination of the whole region. That's why the nations across the Gulf, like United Arab Emirates and Oman and Qatar and Saudi Arabia, those nations are fearful that because of the winds that blow across the Gulf, that their population would be affected by any fallout that comes from a nuclear disaster or an accident or even a destruction. They're very fearful about contaminations coming to their side of the Gulf. And they're fearful. I believe that this will cause the entire Arab world to be an outrage, to be an uproar. And they will say, come, well, are we next? Are we going to be next? I mean, Israel attacked. Look at Isaiah chapter 17. Isaiah chapter 17, verse 1 and 2. I want to take you there quickly. Isaiah 17, 1 and 2. Now, this is Syria. This is a prophecy against Damascus, the capital of Syria. Remember, Syria has always been attacking Israel all the time. In Isaiah chapter 17, verses 1 and 2, the burden against Damascus. Behold, Damascus will cease from being a city. It will become a ruinous heap. The cities Aurora are forsaken. That is, the cities of destruction. That shouldn't be capitalized. That simply is not another city. It's the cities of destruction are forsaken. They will be for flocks which lie down, and no one will make them afraid because they don't want to eat their meat. They're contaminated. In other words, Damascus will become a ruinous heap. I want you to know Damascus is the oldest continuously inhabited city in history. The oldest continuously inhabited city on earth. Remember, Abraham's servant, Eliezer, was from Damascus. Abraham's servant, Eliezer, was from Damascus. It's the oldest continuously inhabited city on the earth. But it will become a ruinous heap. It will become wiped clean, which is the meaning of destruction there in the Hebrew. Wiped clean. None will there'll be some goats and some sheep will go eat some things every now and then, but nobody wants that meat. Nobody wants to go near there. It will be completely contaminated. Why? Because Israel has to strike Damascus. Because they have chemical weapons and they cannot permit them to launch rockets with chemical warheads into Israel. Iran first, and then Damascus has to get taken out. And look what it says in Isaiah 17, verse 14. Then behold, at eventide trouble, and before the morning he is no more. Speaking of Damascus. This is the portion of those who plunder us and the lot of those who rob us. In other words, behold, at eventide there's trouble, but in the morning he is no more. Damascus is reduced to a ruinous heap. But Israel will take a hit, and they'll be weakened by that. And the Arab nation will say, look, they're weakened because I didn't read the rest of Isaiah, but we read that they are weakened by this attack, that the nations are terrified and they're thinking about the makers and not looking at idol gods anymore. They're looking toward the living God, but they're not coming to him, but they're looking towards him. But when Israel strikes out, she has to do this. This has not happened yet. And you would agree with that. Now, and finally, look at Zechariah chapter 12. Zechariah chapter 12. I believe that this conflict, if it widens, if they don't come to a resolution soon, it's going to widen. And this scenario will probably go down. The United States has 3 carrier groups stationed right now in the Mediterranean. A carrier group is a carrier, destroyers, used to be battleships, submarines. And from there, they can launch all kinds of attacks. They send cruise missiles. They can send aircraft. 5 B-1 bombers. This is the big bomber in the United States arsenal. Big bombers, 5 B-1 bombers have been seen landing in Israel. And they are bombing, right now, they're bombing targets in Syria, and they're bombing targets in Yemen, where the Houthis are. Now, the Houthis are another terrorist group, and they're at the southern tip of Saudi Arabia, Yemen. Great Britain and the United States are carrying out attacks against Yemen. Yemen says they have rockets, too, that can reach Israel and destroy her, supplied by Iran. Right now, this is happening. They're bombing Syria right now with the B-1 bomber. They have 3 carrier groups in the Mediterranean Sea. Israel and Great Britain are attacking Yemen right now, trying to eliminate one front on which Israel can take hits. Right now. The war is already widening and widening. Israel assassinated with one hit in Beirut, the capital of Lebanon. They killed one of the main generals of the Hamas. He and 2 of his lieutenants were killed with a strategic strike at an apartment building, took out the whole apartment building and killed this main field marshal general of the Hamas military and 2 lieutenants yesterday. With strategic strike. Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of drunkenness, or dizziness, some translations say. I will make Jerusalem a cup of drunkenness to all the surrounding people. Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Egypt, Hamas, Hezbollah, even parts of Iraq, the surrounding neighbors, evil neighbors, Islamic nations. I will make Jerusalem a cup of drunkenness to all the surrounding peoples when they lay siege against Judah and Jerusalem. This is their final assault against Jerusalem and against Judah. Consider Judah to be the province and Jerusalem to be the capital. It's within 10 miles radius of Jerusalem, let's say. All these armies are going to surround Jerusalem and Judah after they attack Israel, after they sent their bombs and their missiles and their rockets, and now they're where the foot soldiers are coming in, and they're going to lay siege against Jerusalem and Judah. And that day, says Yahweh, I will strike every horse with confusion and the rider with madness. I will open my eyes on the house of Judah and will strike every horse of the people with blindness. Now, this is probably their military tanks, their helicopters, probably cause that they will not be able to communicate, probably disrupt their communications altogether. The IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, will be fighting, and they will have an advantage, but God is going to get involved. And God's going to cause blindness, madness, confusion, panic. He's going to cause the equipment to fail. He's going to cause the communications to be disrupted, to not be able to speak to each other, not be able to communicate with each other. God's going to get involved to save Israel, to save Jerusalem. Listen, in that day, says Yahweh, I will strike every horse with confusion and his rider with madness. I will open my eyes on the house of Judah and will strike every horse of the peoples with blindness. And the governors of Judah, that's the military leaders of Israel, IDF, shall say in their heart, the inhabitants of Jerusalem are my strength in the Yahweh of hosts, their God. In that day, I will make the governors of Judah like a fire pan in the woodpile and like a fiery torch in the sheaves. They shall devour all the surrounding peoples on the right hand and on the left, but Jerusalem shall be inhabited again in her own place. Yes, Jerusalem. In other words, they're going to win. Israel's going to win. And that'll be the end of the era of Israeli madness forever and forever. It's done. If this war expands, God is going to end this era of Israeli conflict once for all. When they come against Judah and Jerusalem with all their armies, they've expended their rockets, their missiles, they've done all they can do. Israel is also going to strike. Listen to this one. This prophecy in Jeremiah chapter 49, verse 2. Let's go there. I want you to see this one too, because this is going to happen, I believe, during the same war. Jeremiah 49, verse 2. He says this. Therefore, behold, the days are coming, says Yahweh, that I will cause to be heard an alarm of war in Rabbah. That's the capital. That's Amman today in Jordan, the capital of Jordan. Rabbah is now Amman, the capital of Jordan. I will cause to be heard an alarm of war in Rabbah of the Ammonites. It shall be a desolate mound, and the villages shall be burned with fire. Then Israel shall take possession of his inheritance, says Yahweh. During this war, as is Israel's custom, they're going to expand their borders. This makes defending their country better. They're going to take all of Jordan. Israel's rightful land includes Jordan. They're going to expand and take a lot of Lebanon, or maybe even take all of Lebanon and go as far as Syria. They're going to drive Hamas out and go all the way to the Sinai near Egypt. They're going to become a super state in the Middle East because God is going to get involved, save Israel, save Jerusalem, and glorify his name through Israel's army. He's not going to do it supernaturally. He's going to, well, not entirely supernaturally, he's going to use Israel's army. And they're experiencing miracles all the time, as is true in most of their wars to date. Now, that's a wonderful scenario, and I believe the church will still be here to see this. But the war that's called for in Ezekiel 38 and 39 involved the outer nations, Russia, Iran, Turkey, Libya, or Sudan, North African nations. Not Egypt, not her immediate neighbors. Where are they? They've been eliminated. The Ezekiel war, 38 and 39, Ezekiel, are the outer ring. And why? Because Israel's a super state. They want to confederate to get silver and gold and cattle. They come down and get, Israel's discovered massive amounts of natural gas deposits in the north. They have oil in the land that they've discovered. Israel's going to be dwelling safely in the land without walls, bars, or gates, securely in the land when that confederacy attacks Israel, Ezekiel 38 and 39. So the immediate neighbors, where are they? They're not mentioned in that confederacy because they've been eliminated in the Psalm 83 war. Now, this is Bible Prophecy 101 to those that study Bible prophecy. I mean, everybody knows about Ezekiel 38, 39, but we don't because we don't study that. But I'm here to tell you that be of good cheer. We've overcome. We're not involved in that, but we can pray for the nation of Israel because they win. God's not going to let these people tear up his land. He's never going to let Jerusalem go down. You can't read Zechariah without knowing that God will never allow Jerusalem to be just destroyed. Never going to allow that. But a lot of things are happening right now that you're not hearing. Nobody's reporting. The news is not reporting because they don't report anything that's real. It's all lies. All of it. American News, BBC, everybody. All lies. That's why you got to wake up and suddenly this is happening or suddenly that's happening. But it's been going on for months or weeks. I study with those who watch, that are Christians, that watch these things and are prophets themselves and are students of Bible prophecy themselves that got years and years of research under their belts. I study with those people. And I'm here to make you aware of what's happening. Because this is happening before our very eyes as I speak. And so, my brothers and sisters, what do we do now? Well, we thank God that his word is true. We thank God that the scripture cannot be broken. That all of his promises to us cannot be broken. As we see ancient prophecies coming to pass that people have overlooked for centuries coming to pass, that are now being made known because knowledge shall increase. When the time of the prophecy is about to be fulfilled, God will give knowledge to his people. Knowledge is increasing. And we are being prepared for the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ for his church. When you see these things about to come to pass, lift up your heads and look up, for your redemption draws near.